Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Thanks for joining. We are back in the studio here. It is Monday night, April 24th, 2023. And yes, it is campaign year, campaign season. It is primary time here in Fairfax. We have two great guests this evening. We have a great show. Thanks for joining. My first guest, great guy. In fact, got to disclose, I donated to this guy's campaign. He is a challenger to an incumbent. Please welcome our first guest, Saddam Azlan Salim. He is a Bangladeshi American, been in this country for a long, long time. In fact, I think he moved here with his family in the early 2000s. He is a graduate of George Mason University, where he has degrees in the, policy and government. He's also been active with the Democratic Party. He is a vice chair of the Young Democrats, the South Asian for America, vice chair of the 8th Congressional District Committee. He is a founding member of both API and Black Caucus here in Fairfax County. Saddam, my friend, thank you for coming.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely.
This evening. I really appreciate the introduction as well.
We appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about why you got into this race.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's, when I got into this race, I made the decision early January, right before my niece was born. She was born at the end of December, right the day before Christmas. And having looked at her and seeing my mom, my sister, and my sister-in-law in the same room, that's 3 different generations who I felt they needed representation. And that was one reason I ran. But the real reason is, someone like me who came from Bangladesh in the early 2000s because of climate change. We were essentially displaced because of climate change.
Oh.
When we got here, we came with literally 2 suitcases for each of us. As soon as we got here, we landed in DC, and that was the best summer I could possibly ask for. But right after that, I went to 5th grade in DC, and as soon as the next summer came, we found ourselves to be homeless. They have sold the building that we lived in to be turned into luxury condos. As a result of that, we found ourselves to be taken in by community and folks in Falls Church in Fairfax County that sort of said, hey, we're going to lend a hand to you. We're going to help you out. Introduced us to affordable housing, introduced us to affordable health care. As a result of that, we got a place to live. My parents were able to find out, my dad found out he was diabetic. My mom found out that she needed major surgery because there was no aftercare after birth. As a result of her surgery, it saved her life, and that was through a community health care out in 7 Corners. Because of that surgery, I stayed back, went to Northern Virginia Community College, did the 2-year, went on to George Mason University, and came out with 0 student loan debt. Got my master's, again, came out with 0 student loan debt. And I tell this to people, and it's one reason, it's many reasons why I run. It's A, climate change, B, when you look at affordable housing in this area, anywhere in the Commonwealth, there isn't enough of those, and my family benefited from that. When you look at affordable health care, we were able to find those affordable health care from community health centers. And of course, affordable education. It allowed me, my sister, and my brother to get a decent education, come out with graduate degrees without feeling that we were in debt by $100,000 to $200,000. When I tell that to people, this is essentially democratic policies that people have been fighting for many, many years that we still fight for. I'm just saying, I benefited from those. They're good policies. We need to continue to fight for those. Those are the reasons I'm really running for is I benefited, and now I want to come back and give back to that same community, stay in the area, work in the area.
That's awesome. No, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And that's a uniquely American story, by the way, so that hits home. I did a quick look up on your name. I like to translate names. Did I get this right? I think it means leader of or community giver back, or giver back to the community leader of it? Is that some?
Yeah,
is that close?
That's close. You know, I come from a small town in Bangladesh where everyone has dreams of going overseas, making money, but the consistent theme with that community has been, no matter where they go, they always give back to communities back home. And you know, I learned that from my grandfather. I think without him, I would never have learned to give back to communities, and that, you know, resonates with my name. That resonates with who I am going forward as well.
And I think you touched on it, but why you're passionate about housing, right? Why you're passionate about these values that are represented in the Democratic Party platform, right?
Yeah. And again, you know, when it comes to housing, you know, my family waited 2 years just to get housing. We were on a wait list, application after applications, and then we finally got the unit because we had to meet a certain income threshold. Right now, if you were to go get and apply for housing, you have to wait about 2-3 years. And that should not be the case. When you live in an area like this, when we're one of the state where we pay the most taxes, along with one of the wealthiest states, we should not be where there's no affordable housing. And Richmond has an obligation to do something about it. Whether, you know, they work with localities, they work with developers, they work with counties, and making sure when we look at zoning, when we look at what is the process and how is that slowing down. And that's where Richmond can come in, either subsidize that or make sure that there's a process in place so that the right people get housing.
And that the developer's challenged on what they're building and delivering. Look, I get it. It's about profits. I'm, you know, certainly a capitalist. But at what point do you stop extracting everything out of a community, right?
Yeah.
You have to have an obligation to provide people reasonable housing, workforce housing, affordable housing. So no, I really like that about your campaign message. What are some of the other reasons why you got into this thing?
You know, since I want to say going back to 2016, we have seen rights being taken away. We have seen things that have been in place for centuries being rolled back, specifically reproductive rights. You know, that the reproductive care saved my mother's life, and without it, I don't think she would be alive today. And that's what people miss, is that when we talk about reproductive rights, it's aftercare. It's making sure people have the right resources available. And when we take those away, we don't just take it away from one group. We take it away from every group. We take it away from the LGBTQ communities. We take away from women of color. We take away from minority groups that otherwise don't have any other choice of getting access to reproductive care. And you know, having a sister-in-law, mom, and a niece, they're not worried about, you know, whether they're being taken away or not, and they're not paying attention to political drama that's happening right now, where at the national level everything is getting rolled back. Roe v. Wade got overturned. As a result, the state sees that as an opportunity to strengthen some of those conservative values.
And do you think there's been a shift, or sort of like a back? There are people that are Republican that are coming to the Democratic Party. So are some of those values being sort of watered down, or do you see that, or what do you think the big challenge is there?
So I think the big challenge there is a lot of folks that are coming over to the Democratic side. That's a lot of younger folks. And you know, I know some folks personally where they have had kids. They have seen how the school system has been treated. They have seen how reproductive rights have been tarnished. When they look at all that, they realize it's no longer about the values, you know, 200 years ago. It's about the values now. It's about making sure people have the right, and they have the right choices, and they have to be able to make those on their own. And I think that's what's happening is a lot of young people are getting more involved in the process. We look at technology. We look at, you know, somebody says something in Richmond, it's available nationwide within seconds, and I think that's driving the forces out there where, you know, young people are getting more involved. We have, you know, I was a Providence co-chair where we had high schoolers that were involved in the process, making sure their people registered to vote. They, you know, did precinct operations, you name it, they were out there, but they weren't able to vote at that time. But the moment they turned 18, the moment they were able to vote, they took their, you know, their ideas to the polls and said, here's who I want to be represented by, and here's why.
Do you think they'll be energized enough to come out for the primary?
I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason I say this is because our public education system, it's been attacked when you look at K through 12, but also our universities. The Board of Visitors, the governor has the ability to appoint new board members. And when we look at some of them that gets appointed, and we have some Democrats that will go ahead and appoint them onto those boards, what that does is they're going to look at it and say, how can we look at universities where it's more about profits than getting a better education? So when students look at that, they're going to look at the fact that your tuition is going to go up, your curriculum is going to get changed, and that's what the board has the ability to make those changes. And I think right now, Democrats should be sticking together, making sure we have the right folks making those right decisions.
One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, we can push some of this into the next segment, but just for this first segment. Last week you got some news.
Yep.
It was a three-way race now for the primary. It's now a two-way. How do you feel about that?
You know, I feel good, and you know, I did thank Erica as well as, you know, thanking her for coming into this race and challenging me as well. And you know, after that conversation, I felt very good. I think going into this race, I always saw it as a one-on-one race with the incumbent, and now that it's back to a one-on-one race, I feel a lot more comfortable. I know a lot of folks within the party, a lot of different groups, they did not want it to stay within this race because it's a three-way race. Now that it's a two-way, I think they're going to come back into it. They're going to get more involved, and we have already seen the rise of donations coming in, the rise of volunteer signups, along with folks that just want to get more involved.
And top reason why we need change?
You know, we definitely need a senator, a leader for Virginia's future. When you look at the General Assembly, when you look at the policies that have been instituted in the past, they're not as progressive as most people think they are. The district itself has changed significantly, roughly 53 to 57%, but they have become more progressive, and that's another reason why someone like me should be representing them.
We need someone more progressive. I love it. Folks, when we come back, we'll talk into the what and how. Our guest will try to get those things done for the district. So we'll be right back. Thanks.
Caitlin, be serious. No, take the oath. Come on. I'm totally taking this seriously. Okay, I'm ready. You may begin. I pledge that I will never meet in person with anyone I first met online without checking with my parent or guardian. And furthermore, if my parent or guardian agrees to the meeting, it will be in a public place and my parent or guardian must come along. Do you pinky swear? I do.
When you teach your kids about internet safety, they'll pass it on. For more information, go to cableclicksmart.org.
Dare to load their minds. Dare to explore. Dare to STEM. Learn more at She Can STEM.
You're not the kind of guy that makes the girls all sigh.
2 for $3.
They never turn their heads and look when you walk by. 'Cause it's the little things.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Helping.
What a nice young man.
Pass it on.
My goodness.
You are not what you got.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
I better get out of here. Ooh.
Get it.
Get it. Get it.
Give your town a reason to celebrate, because every Goodwill item you bring home brings job training and more to your community. Goodwill, bring good home.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Thanks for coming back to studio with us and our special guest this evening, Saddam Azlan Salim.
Yep.
He is a candidate for the State Senate 37th District. He's got a primary, and full disclosure, I've donated to his campaign, so I like him. I hope you listen to him and give him consideration. Let's talk about gun violence. It's unfortunately still a topical, item out there in our country. So, how do you differ from the person you're going up against?
So the first time I experienced any type of gun violence or gun violence related acts was when I was in high school. They closed all the doors and they told us there's a shooting in Virginia Tech. This was in the 2007. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is probably a one-off. This is America, nothing like this should be happening. And since then, I have seen the increase of gun violence. And this year in 2023, we had more gun violence and more shootings than the number of days. That to me is scary. And of course, my opponent in this race has voted against banning assault weapons, has voted against allowing or voted to allow concealed carry in places that have alcohol. And of course, when it came to background checks, when it came to making sure we strengthen that process, he only voted for that when it was watered down to his liking. And it's not about whether somebody has guns or not. It's about making sure that there's safe storage. It's about making sure it's in the right hands. There's no reason a civilian or somebody like me needs assault weapons. People don't use that for hunting. The only place that we have seen consistently being used is at shootings. And my first priority if I get to the General Assembly would be to rally Democrats, would be to rally everyone and say we're going to have to sit down and really ban assault weapons. We're going to have to come up with a way to make sure people are educated. If somebody does want guns, somebody does want specific things, there needs to be a permit process, there needs to be a testing, there needs to be a mental fitness along with making sure they go through rigorous testing in order to get that permit. And I think, of course, working with groups like Moms Demand Action, working with other groups that have carried and cared for this preventing gun violence for decades, it's going to be a step forward, whereas my opponent has always said, hey, I'm going to listen, but I'm not going to do anything.
So it's a major Democratic Party platform value. He's not the only one that doesn't support it. Why do you think that is?
There's about 2 people that voted against banning assault weapons. And my opponent's reasoning was he was not sure what the classification of that would be. What would happen to people who already own those guns? And that's where, instead of saying, oh, what would happen, instead of saying, oh, there's more guns out there, we need to say, what are we going to do to ensure that they're also involved in the process? There's a lot of responsible gun owners out there, and we need to bring them into the conversation and say, hey, here's what we want to do. How do we do this? Other states, including the District of Columbia, have banned assault weapons, and they have seen shootings go down significantly. They have, when we have shootings, we have 10, 20, 30 people that are dying in every shootings that have happened. And the goal is to reduce that amount, B, less people having guns on their hands. If the people do want them, they have to go through a permit system, a process that really works. And that's the job of the General Assembly, is to figure out those differences, come up with what works and what doesn't work.
And I think it's reasonable to ask someone's mental capacity or state of mind. I mean, we all have friends that we deep down know they shouldn't have guns, right? I mean, we all have that friend, right? But I don't hear anyone saying we're going to take guns away. That's not really what anyone that wants safety, right?
Yeah, everybody wants safety. Like I would like to go to cultural events. I would like to go to things where there's mass number of people without the fear of thinking that there's going to be a shooting. Grandparents are at home thinking, oh, my grandkids are away in college or at an elementary school, And when you get a notification about there's an active shooter or
Yeah.
a mass shooting, the first thing they're going to think is it my granddaughter or my grandkid's school? And that's the scary part. And you know, I've seen where KinderCare and other places that are for preschools have now instituted where they're going to do active shooting drills.
Yeah, come on.
And to kids, that's traumatizing.
Yeah.
You know, when I grew up in this area, I went to Fairfax County Public Schools, and the only thing I had to worry about was the fire drills. That was it.
Right.
So now kids have more things to worry about. That alone creates the mental health crisis that we're all talking about it, but we're not funding the programs that's needed to ensure that the right people get the help when it comes to mental health issues.
Yeah, and for me, this is just my personal opinion, the answer to the problem is not more guns.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, if the number was the solution, we would have fixed the problem years ago, right? Because per capita, I think there's some 300 million guns in the country. So are we safe if there's 1 billion guns in the country?
No.
Right? And that's my point, right? I mean, it's just, if arming more people with more guns is the goal, it's not a solution.
No, and that should never be a solution.
Right.
It should be about providing training, safe storage, making sure people understand what guns are and where to store them the right place. And you know, we should definitely be looking at when it comes to, you know, if you buy a car, you have to get car insurance, you have to register that with the state, you have to register that with the DMV. How is that any different than owning a gun?
Yeah, and again, the contrarian view as well, it's protected.
Yeah.
You know, I can form my militia, right?
Yeah.
Even though you can't regulate me.
Yeah.
So.
And no one's saying we're going to take anyone's guns away.
Yeah. No, I think that's an important thing. We talked about reproductive rights. We talked about housing. I'm just looking at your bio here. Environment, education, let's chat about those.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, you know, every year Republicans will try to roll back a lot of the progress that Democrats had made when they had the trifecta, when it comes to Clean Car Act, when it comes to making sure we protect the environment. As somebody who has come from a place where climate change displaced us, we are still seeing climate change all around the world, where people will move, you know, to the Americas, whether it's South America or North America, and that's going to displace a lot of people, and we have to be ready for that. And on top of that, when the General Assembly put in the Clean Car Act, they wanted to get reduce the carbon footprint by 2025 and then completely by 2035. But every Republican, every time that we're in the General Assembly, they're fighting to overturn a lot of those rules. They're trying to roll that back because they're thinking, oh, alternative energy, we don't have that. And that's where the problem is. We're not doing enough to upgrade our electric grid system. When we talk about the electric vehicle charging stations, our grids aren't ready for that. So instead of going back and forth, we should be putting bills that are going to help us, that are going to get us ready for the future, not for the past.
Well, that would require some forward thinking.
Yeah.
That would require a change to the institutional frame of mind.
Yeah.
And that would require sacrifice to the next generation.
Yeah.
I think there's too many people that live here and now and this budget, and they don't care about next budget.
No, they definitely don't, and you know.
Cut my taxes.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into the education portion, where a lot of times, you know, they budget that they're going to give teachers a 10% increase, but that's over a 2-year period. So you're looking at a 5%, and they're, you know, the national average is probably, you know, I don't have the number right off of my head, but it's not that great. And to say, hey, we're going to pay a teacher less than $50,000 to live in Northern Virginia, and then we're going to give them a 5% raise and then another 5% the following year, that's not a lot. And on top of that, we're, you know, when we talk about our education system, we're A, not paying teachers, B, we're not, you know, a lot of the times when we're looking at curriculums, they want to roll some of that back. We saw the whole mess with CRT. And as somebody who has gone through public school systems here, I could not speak a single word of English when I came here. Fairfax County public school system got me ready for the future, helped me learn English, helped me understand a new language. And to say that they had bad intentions is just terrible.
Yeah. So you were ESOL?
Yep. I went through ESOL, and in my senior year of high school, I took AP English. because how much I learned in this education system.
And did anyone approach you about critical race theory while you were?
Nope.
Just, yeah, okay. So.
Nope. And you know, and there comes a point where I think a lot of our history, a lot of America's history, should be taught the way it was, so that we can learn from that. We can make changes going forward. I think trying to hide all that, trying to roll things back, trying to say, oh, we're not going to go and study that, or we're not going to look into any of that, that sort of takes away the fact that, you know, history is history. The only thing we can do is let's not make the same mistakes. Let's move forward.
Yeah. And it strikes me, just as a Democrat and Republican discussion, Republicans pride themselves on freedom, right? Independence, you know, liberties, self-determination. But in this case, in this Commonwealth, they're about taking away choice.
Yep.
They're about reducing your freedom of what books to read,
Yep.
right? You're not able to live and love the way you choose.
Yep.
Which I guess Democrats need to do a much better job at.
I mean, we definitely need to do a better job at messaging and how we see all those issues. And then, you know, my opponent, when it came to education, when it came to the COVID, you know, as soon as COVID started, he wanted the schools to be reopened. He did not care about the staff, did not care about other students, just said, hey, we want students back at the school. And he'll campaign on the fact that he opened up the schools, but the fact that he sued Governor Ralph Northam over executive breach, and he didn't just do it by himself, he teamed up with a Republican to do that. And of course, at the end, he withdrew his lawsuit, but it was, you know, clearly stated that he didn't care about anyone else except for the ideas of some, you know, a small number of groups. And of course, when you sue a governor and then also decide that you're the guy for education, you're the guy that's going to reopen the schools, and yet you're not going to make it safe for students at the schools, you're not going to pay the teachers, you're not going to make sure that they, you know, the teachers have they can live in the area. Instead, some of them live 45 minutes away from here.
Well, that sums it up, right? You're going up against someone that doesn't necessarily adhere to or value the values. So, quick, when's the primary vote?
June 20th. Early voting starts on May 5th.
Okay, folks. Thank you, sir, for
Of
coming
course.
out.
Thank you for having me.
Folks, appreciate you checking out Mr. Salim's website and information. Come back. We have another special guest right here in the studio as we continue the Monday night election prep. Thanks.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. Already posted it.
I got a creak in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. But if you throw me love, I'll throw you some more.
It's a big responsibility.
Oh, it's huge. I know, it's huge.
And the salary.
Oh my god, yes. I mean,
Right?
like, I was about to move in with my parents, and right before, so this saved me.
I really believe in you, you know?
Thank you. It's nice to hear that from someone.
These are cool. Did you, what did you?
we're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Thanks for coming back to Studio C. Again, it's campaign season and it's primary season. My next guest is Mary Barthelson. She is an accomplished systems engineer. She has a master's degree in systems engineering from George Mason University. I could read her bio all night. It's very long and impressive. But what you need to know for this evening is she's running in a primary race for the Virginia House of Delegate, District 7. Is that correct?
Yep.
Well, let's get to it. Mary, thank you so much for joining us. First question, why did you decide to run? It's a crazy arena. What compelled you here?
You know, it is a crazy primary season this year with all of the races. But
Tons of races.
Like most people, I ran because there are issues that I care about. I'm an engineer in the space industry full-time, as well as a community volunteer. And you know, I see that there are needs in our community that are not being met, and also a need for elected officials who understand technology. Otherwise, they're very reliant on lobbyists.
Great point. How is that going to change if you're elected?
So as a systems engineer, I am trained to work with people of different skill sets to come up with ideal solutions to problems. And I think that fits very well in you know, a position like the General Assembly, where there's more and more technical bills being passed. Sustainable energy is one that's a big topic, but there's also matters of data privacy, AI, autonomous driving, you know, social media, things like that. And I've seen our elected officials get confused over simple bills like the difference between an electric car standard and a car emissions standard. So it's really important to have someone who understands that technology there, who can explain things in real time, understand the options, and also when to push back when companies are asking for certain things. You know, we don't ever want to do something that you know, hurts business for no reason, but we can make sure that they are acting responsibly and that we're advocating for the best interest of our taxpayers and our constituents.
Sure, and again, I skipped over a lot of your bio. It's very impressive, and I suggest everyone go out and check it out for yourself. You'll be very, very impressed. This is a new district, right? It was redrawn this last time. So
Yes.
how different do you see yourself from with a previous district or the sort of hodgepodge of districts?
So District 7 is predominantly comprised of the old District 36. So that was represented by Delegate Ken Plum, who just retired, so the seat is now open.
He was there for a while.
44 years.
That's a while.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's mostly Reston, part of Herndon, which was in the old 86th district, and then part of Fairfax down to West Ox Road. So I consider myself to be as blue as the incumbent, but I have more of an interest in technology and things like education.
And that is certainly going to be needed as the region transforms. The issues, institutions, and everything else will need to follow.
Absolutely. Northern Virginia is a huge tech sector. We have all of the data centers in Ashburn and throughout the county as well, and a lot of tech businesses moving into the area. So I think it would be fitting to have someone you know, who actually works in the industry holding elected office there.
Yeah, it's pretty important. And when you consider that region, its proximity to the airport, to DC, the toll road access. I mean, there's a lot going on there, right?
It is a busy district for sure.
I know Herndon, we just got 2 additional metro stations. The metro opened up Dulles and beyond. How far does the district stretch west again into Herndon, right?
Yes, so it's part of
not the town.
No, it doesn't cover the town, but part of the old 86th district, not in the town, is included. And I do have a section on my website if people want to go and see the new map. They can go and put in their address, and it should link straight to an interactive map.
How's the campaign coming? What sort of feedback are you getting?
You know, I think there's a lot of people who are very excited about it, especially people who are, work in STEM fields are excited to see someone with their background. I also have a lot of people in the community who are interested, who know me more from my volunteer work. So I volunteer a lot with the tent communities in Reston. We have 4 tent communities there now and more throughout the rest of the county. So I've done a lot of work to raise awareness about those things, and some of our campaigns were featured in the media. So people who would like to see those issues addressed and continue my advocacy at the state level, they were really happy to see me running.
There is always an institutional resistance to newcomers. Can you talk about what that experience has been like? Delegate Plum, I would say he's a real gentleman, so he never made me feel unwelcome as a new face in the party. Classy guy.
Yes, so definitely a true gentleman, and he's leaving big shoes to fill, but I appreciate him for that. And there's definitely an interest from the young Dems to be involved. I'm the only young Dem in the race. So there's quite a few of them running for office, getting out and volunteering, but there's not that many of them elected, and I think that there's a sense that we aren't qualified, or we don't have the expertise to run, or that we should wait. But I think that we are bringing in new perspectives, and we are qualified.
Okay, you just set off a flare in my head. When I hear someone saying it's not your turn, or you should wait, or maybe gives, I call BS. I think democracy is about ideas. It's about facing people with contrarian views and trying to persuade them. If not, you agree on something that might work for the constituents. So bravo to you and the other young Dems for running and stepping up. I think it's great that more people get involved, and it should be easier to get involved. And you shouldn't need the blessing of anyone. The process should be that easy. So.
Absolutely, and when you run for office, it's a good opportunity to bring ideas forward and to have them discussed. So one of the benefits of having someone like Delegate Plum in office for so long is that they have a lot of historical knowledge and experience, but you also lose out on getting to debate issues that the community is facing at that high of a level. So now in this race, it is a great opportunity to talk about those things and for voters to decide what they want for the future.
So why did he retire now versus 2 years ago, or wait 2 more years?
You'd have to ask him. There were a lot of retirements this year. I've talked to him a couple of times. He's always been polite, but he definitely kept his plans close. Did
you run before? I'm trying to think.
I did. So I ran in 2021, although it was COVID season, so everything was closed. There wasn't really any
good for you, by the way,
events.
Yeah.
So everything was just on Zoom. So I did get 23%, which was a good showing for a first-time candidate running against an incumbent.
In a primary?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
So I didn't think anyone was going to retire, but he did retire this time around. So I was excited to run again.
How is the campaign different this time, just from the previous primary?
Well, everything is open, so we can actually have in-person events. So that's a really big one. There's a lot more people involved. I'm getting a lot more questions from the community because they know that we're definitely going to have a change. So being the involved community that we are, they want to have a say. They want to hear from the different candidates and to see what they're bringing to the table.
How many candidates are still in the race?
There's 4 of us now. There was 5, but now there's 4 of us.
Okay. And why do you think you're the better candidate?
So I think I'm the only grassroots candidate in the race that works with the community volunteers who are out doing the hands-on work in the community. So I think that put me in a good position to see the issues that our community is facing. And then we also just don't have people with the technical knowledge in the General Assembly. So I think not only would I be a good advocate for our area I think that I would be bringing something new to the General Assembly as well that the other candidates are not.
I read your, again, impressive bio. SAIC is your current employer.
Yes.
It's a high-tech science application international corporation, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty well known, so that's quite the foundation and platform for what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm currently lead model and architect on one of their space programs, so I'm responsible for the architecture of space systems.
So folks, when I said her bio is impressive, I'm not BSing you. I encourage you to go read it. It's very impressive. Sorry, I could have spent 20 minutes reading it, but so let's get into, we've got a couple minutes for the break here, but let's get into some of your priorities. You know, top issue for the General Assembly. What are you going to be? What's your initiative? What do you want to champion first and foremost?
So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring a mobile mental health crisis unit to Ruston. Right now the one that serves us comes from Merrifield, so it can take a couple of days for them to get out to us, if they do get out to us. Okay. So those units were recommended as part of the reviews that took place from the police commissions, because a lot of times police are responding to these mental health crises emergencies and they don't have the skills to be able to deal with it. So we have had people die at the hands of police in Fairfax County. And we've also had instances where police just did not have the authority to get people the help that they need. And in Ruston, there was one incident at the beginning of last year where a woman was found wandering around in the snow at like 2 or 3 a.m. Police took her to a hotel that was paid for by Ruston Strong because they couldn't take her to the hospital. It took 3 days to get her an evaluation, and during that time she went missing. So several of us from Ruston Strong reached out to her family trying to locate her. Eventually we found her in Montgomery County, and I went out there with another volunteer. We called their emergency services. They came right away, gave her an evaluation on the spot, and they took her to the hospital. So if you want to upset people in Fairfax County, tell them that Montgomery County has something that we don't. But I don't think that there's any reason that we shouldn't have this service available to us in our corner of the county.
Wow, I love it. My mom was diagnosed with dementia, and I have a sister with a cognitive issue. So hold tight, folks. We're going to come back and double click on some of these other issues that I know you're going to want to hear from Mary firsthand. Appreciate you sticking around. We'll see you after the public service announcement.
Nice going, Spencer. I can't believe we broke Old Man Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We?
Go to the door, ask for the ball back. Are you serious?
It's my ball, Myrtlebeck.
You're so dead. I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go. See ya. Remember me and your well.
Nice one. Some friends you are.
Keep smiling, keep shining.
Hi. Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's a matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about Rick Doubtfire. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Thanks for coming back. We're still live here in Studio C. My special guest, Mary Barthelson. She is running in a primary, June 20th, here in the area of Fairfax, Northern Fairfax. It's a new District 7 for the Virginia House of Delegates. Mary, thanks for sticking around. Let's finish up on this mobile health
the Mobile Mental Health Crisis
Love
Unit.
that,
Yes, so the county has started creating them throughout the county as part of the recommendation from the commission reviewing police practices, but the service is not available to everyone equally throughout the county. So we've definitely seen that over in our Reston, Herndon community, and I think being as large as we are, it makes sense to have our own. There is funding available at the state level for it, and we do see state dollars used for these programs. So I think that that's my #1 priority. It's something I've been working on for a couple of years now. I've talked to the Board of Supervisors about it. So I think I'd just like to continue doing that and make sure that we get it done at the state level.
Great. Housing?
Yes, housing is my next big priority. So it's a popular topic in Reston and Herndon. There is a lot of support for things like affordable housing.
Like real affordable housing, right?
Yes.
Like ADUs.
So the county does have a plan for increasing the number of units of housing available for people who are below the 60% AMI level. There isn't any plan yet for those who are below the 30% level, so we do have to come up with funding for that somewhere. But we really need to make sure that our projected plans of development are meeting the needs of the community. We knew that we were going to be short, and it's not just something that is in Fairfax County. We are short something like 10 million units nationally. So that's part of the reason that we're seeing a huge increase in prices. You know, people's kids are growing up and they can't afford to live in the community that they grew up in. One issue specific to Fairfax County that we're seeing is an aging population that can't afford to live in the county anymore. So either people are leaving, or unfortunately we are seeing an increase in homelessness among the elderly, and that's first-time homelessness. So people who have never been homeless in their life become homeless in their older age. Yes.
Wow.
And so that's something that we've also seen at the tent communities. We have people who are 80 years old living there, unfortunately, completely taken care of by volunteers. So we need to make sure that we're keeping on top of the housing needs. I've worked with housing coalitions in the county, Fairfax NAACP, Reston Strong, Cornerstones, to go before the Board of Supervisors and advocate for our needs. And so I think that with that coalition building and that experience and that knowledge, I can be a strong advocate for that at the state level.
Oh, okay, impressive. What's your third top topic?
My third topic is technology. It's a very broad topic, but sustainable energy is a big one. Right now we have a governor who is not supportive of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which sets carbon caps, and he wants to withdraw from it. He also doesn't support the Virginia Clean Economy Act. So it's really important to have elected officials in the General Assembly who can make sure that we support those two pieces of legislation, and also that we're staying ahead of the curve as far as you know, new technology. Our governor also sent 2,500 jobs out of state that would have been in the sustainable energy sector. So we want to make sure we keep those jobs in the state, and that we make sure that things like distributed rooftop solar are available for everyone. Reston and other communities have the challenge of having HOAs who they don't necessarily know how to implement the state laws to make those things available for everyone, as well as like electrical charging stations. So, having my background as a systems engineer, I think I can get those policies through the General Assembly and then also come home and make sure I'm explaining it to everyone.
And those are really technologies of the future.
Mhm.
It's the jobs of the future. So why would anyone not support those? I'm a little bit lost.
Yeah, new technology is the foundation for new economies.
Right.
So we have to make sure that we're planning for that appropriately.
If we don't, someone else will.
Yes, they will. So we don't want Virginia to be left behind.
Mm-hmm. So that opens up a whole technology. When you get into that, my head explodes a little bit. What are some of the other sort of things that are connected to that you might be supporting?
So, data privacy is another big one that I'm passionate about. We saw in 2016 social media companies selling everyone's behavioral data, which was used by companies like Cambridge Analytica so that they could make very specific targeted messaging to radicalize, little bubbles of people on social media. And it can also be used for maliciously targeting seniors with scams, things like that. So I foresee myself being someone who's very, very strong on data privacy. I'd like to make sure that students are educated on responsible digital citizenship so they know how to properly engage online with each other and also where to get reliable information from. And then there's other topics like that I haven't heard brought up as often, but things like autonomous driving and AI. Right now there's no regulations for it at all. And I think in part that's just because our elected officials don't understand that there's a need for it.
So I think I get it, but let's, for the audience, let's double click on that. So it's newer emerging technology in vehicles, and more manufacturers are adapting these technologies. But there's no regulation on these technologies in terms of these adaptive cruising and lane.
Right, so there's no regulations as far as training drivers on how to use it and how not to use it. So I think that's fairly straightforward. Drivers should be trained when they get their license if they're going to be, driving a car. And then this is primarily a concern for full autonomous driving, which hasn't been widely implemented yet. But there is a regulation to make sure that bad behaviors are sort of scrubbed out of the database when the technology is being developed. So it's been a huge topic of conversation among some professors I know of how we should approach that to get autonomous driving in line with other industries. We do see regulations on technology for things like aircraft, but that's because everyone's familiar with it. They've been around for a long time. It just takes time for people to become as familiar when technology is new.
And for the AI piece, it works on data sets. So the more data is collected, the more intelligent it gets, right? So
yes, although I believe that the professor who I was speaking to about this the other day, he brought up the concern that specifically for driving that they may not be screening to remove bad behaviors that they don't want to see. So it's important to make sure that there are standards that are set and that companies who are developing these technologies to be used in the public are following them.
And you touched on the bad behavior. So if someone is in a fully autonomous car, it's probably not a best practice to fall asleep and let the car drive itself, right?
No, you're not supposed to sleep even if your car, even if you have a Tesla that has self-driving.
You shouldn't text and drive.
No, you still have to pay attention and be alert, and if you hit someone, you could still be responsible for that.
And that's amazing that there isn't like hardcore training and regulation for that sort of technology.
Yeah, I think technology has gotten ahead of legislators in a lot of cases.
Well, that's always, especially with this, right?
Yeah.
And it's more important in this region because there's so much density and volume of traffic flow, right?
Yeah, and we have things like ChatGPT now, and just all these new technologies popping up, and it's the same thing with them. I don't think anyone in our, any of our elected officials really know what questions they should be asking or what the impact of new technology is to the public, to know really what regulation should be passed. So oftentimes what happens is you have a new technology, a problem happens, potentially people could die, and then you go, oh, okay, we need regulation now.
Right. Yeah, because there's always an unintended consequence of something new. I mean, whether it's good or bad, it happens. So, no, I think that's amazing that you're looking at those. Talk a little bit about the rest of the field, the primary. What are you doing? Get your name out there, distinguishing yourself.
So I've been calling around everyone I know from volunteering, getting them out to do door knocking. So this election's really going to be one on voter contact. So that's doing things like door knocking, getting out and speaking to voters. So I do have a lot of volunteer opportunities coming up, as well as fundraisers. I'm going to have some meet and greets that I'll be posting about on my website and social media more. But really it's just going to be about getting our message out to the voters. Some people don't even know that we have a primary yet.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah, and well, they haven't been voting in primaries since we had an incumbent in office for so long.
I never thought of that. That makes so much sense. No one ever ran against Delegate Plum because he was there for 44 years. 40 years. That makes sense. I'm sorry to laugh, but yeah, I guess no one would know that there was a primary. What's your biggest challenge, I think? Let's end with that.
I think, my biggest challenge is going to be fundraising, because the people who I spend the most time with, unhoused people who live in tents, refugees, students, they're not people who have a lot of money, and so they're the ones who are most familiar with me and my work, which is very low visibility, although I think it's very high impact. So I'm having to rely on others in my network to call them and ask them to donate so that I can buy things like yard signs and lit to get out and talk to voters. So I'm not someone who has a lot of corporate money behind me, so I really rely on those individual donations.
Mary, thank you so much for coming out. Appreciate it. Lots of luck to you. I think you'll do well. Folks, appreciate you sticking with us. And if you do get a chance, check out Mary Barthelson, the primary candidate in the House of Delegate district race, district number 7. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.